In 2008, Marvel released Iron Man with Robert Downey Jr. In 2010, and also in 2008, you had an Incredible Hulk movie. 2 years later, in 2010, you had Iron Man 2, and then in 2011, you had Thor and Captain America: The First Avenger, all which led to 2012's Avengers, which was a massive success. In 2013, Warner Brothers and DC gave us Man of Steel. In 2016, Warner Brothers gave us BVS, Batman vs Superman, Superman's second movie, and he's already clashing with Batman. Also in BVS, you get a forced-in Wonder Woman appearance, and you get sloppy cameos from The Flash and Cyborg. In 2017, you get a solo Wonder Woman movie, which should have been her first appearance in the DCEU, and not in BVS. Also in 2017, you get Joostice League. A mess. What is the point of these comparisons? Quite simple. Marvel took their time in that 4-year stretch to establish the individual personalities of what would become the core Avengers group, while having Nick Fury, Hawkeye, and Black Widow play smaller roles in the solo movies, but giving them, slightly bigger ones in the eventual team up. What makes Marvel's plan work is that it took the time to establish characters. Warner Brothers and DC decided to not waste time establishing characters and letting the audience get to know who they are. Their idea was, let's just rush everything and catch up because we just want to make that Marvel money, and that Marvel money is sweet. Fuck the fans and fuck these legacy and fuck these characters that have decades of history. Let's just cram everything into one movie and say, hey, I tried. Oh, how fitting does that phrase for Justice League ever fit? I tried. That is 2017's Justice League in a nutshell. I tried and I failed. What makes this movie fail is that it completely just feels totally disconnected from Man of Steel and BVS. Now listen, I've seen the Synder Cut twice, and I eventually do plan to watch it for a third time. But 2017's Justice League is always going to be that Frankensteinian movie that it both irritates me and fascinates me all at the same time. Because for as much shit as this movie gets totally wrong, it does have things that I feel that it got more right than Zack Snyder could ever do. And that's actually something that always fascinates. It fascinates me to this day as to how much Joss Whedon's version of Justice League did certain things better than Zack Snyder could ever do with his superhero universe. Now, does that completely change my view of 2017's Justice League? No, I still think this movie sucks. When you watch this movie, if you try to watch this movie as part of the intended trilogy that began with Man of Steel, it feels completely disconnected. The tone is totally different. Everything is just totally different. The characters don't even feel the same. For example, in BVS, Ben Affleck's Batman is more than just brooding. He's a borderline homicidal maniac. In this movie, he's cutting jokes, being all lighthearted, acting like a joke man, acting like jokey man and not Batman. It's completely different. Speaking of which, if you see this renditions of Superman, hell, I say this, just Joss Whedon's version of Superman is more like the actual Superman himself, where he puts others before himself and actually has a bright and hopeful personality. Now, do I love that? Absolutely. But here's the thing. How do we get to this? Because in Man of Steel, he was Mopey Man. In BVS, he was hardcore Mopey Man. Now all of a sudden, he's acting like Superman. Where did the character change happen? And not to mention, Clark's resurrection in this movie is completely ridiculous. They basically used a supercharged mother box to resurrect him. You should have just did what Death of Superman did and just have Clark in the Fortress of Solitude with the Eradicator and in a healing chamber. That would have came out of left field, but let's face it, with the DCEU, Warner Brothers and DC haven't really been true to canon with a lot of these adaptations of the characters. So having the Eradicator appear wouldn't seem all out of place, to be honest with you. But yeah, Clark's resurrection in this movie kind of sucks. This movie's entire storyline is basically Steppenwolf's invading Earth to collect the mother boxes. For what reasons, I do not know. World domination, no different than any other villain. No, in any superhero movie. Syrian Hines, he puts on a solid performance as Steppenwolf, but you can clearly tell that the character's motivations have been stripped away. Especially if you've seen Synder Cut, then you know that Steppenwolf's motivations have been stripped away, and that there was much more to his character than what was in this movie, which is very singular and very forgettable. Not to mention, he looks like a PS2 supervillain. The CGI of Steppenwolf sucks. It doesn't deserve the performance of Syrian Hines, who's desperately trying to give it his all and make the bullshit material he has work, even though it's not. You have shit-stained Miller as the Flash, and listen, fuck Ezra Miller. He's a piece of shit. I don't care for his performance as the Flash. He's too neurotic. He's too just cheesy. He doesn't feel like Barry Allen to me. There's no he has no self-confidence. I like Grant Justin's version of Flash. He feels like Barry Allen. Ezra Miller's Flash, he never felt like Barry Allen to me. He felt like Mary Allen or David Allen or just nobody in general. It's just Ezra Miller pretending to be the Flash, and he's not a horrible actor. I just don't like this rendition of Flash. It just doesn't work for me. I never liked this rendition. I never really cared for Ezra Miller's version of Flash. He has cool scenes, absolutely. I just don't like him in the role. I would prefer to actor with more who embodies the Flash better than Ezra dipshit Miller. Ray Fisher as Cyborg, he's decent, he's okay. The Snyder Cut actually gives him more, even though the Snyder Cut is very gives him a full origin story. Honestly, truthfully, you could have kept that in this movie, and you would have appreciated Cyborg a little bit more. But what you get in the Joostice League version of it, he's all right. Like, he's fine. He doesn't really do anything that's offensive. It doesn't do anything that's not offensive. He's literally just there. Jason Momoa as Aquaman, he's always had Momoa's really fun as Aquaman. He's okay in this movie. Nothing really to complain about. He doesn't really shine until you get to his solo movie where Jason Momoa gets to fully explore the character of Aquaman. In this one, he has some fun bits here and there. And I already mentioned that both Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck are playing two totally different versions of their pre-existing characters to the point where they feel completely just unrelated to what came before. Henry Cavill's acting more like Superman, and Ben Affleck's Batman went from being a borderline psychopath to a jokester. And then you have Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, who's just Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. I don't like Gal Gadot in the role of Wonder Woman, and my mind is not really changed from her solo movie, and it's not really changed in this one. There are 5 better actresses that could have been better as Wonder Woman, but Gadot, she's okay. I do not hate her enough. I don't hate her enough to want to rant about her, but I don't like her enough to want to continue to see her in the role. So yeah, you have all those components. The principal actors, they're all okay for what the materials are given, even though the 2 big ones are completely rewritten to be unrelated to what came before, and there's no explanation as to how this change happened. Well, you could have easily gave me some bullshit answer about how, since Clark was dead, he's now going to appreciate life better, or some nonsense like that. Instead of him acting like he was the beacon of hope since Man of Steel, which he wasn't. Because like I said, if you watch Man of Steel BVS and this version of Justice League, the character has no evolution from those 2 movies to this. It's like a light switch. It just flips, and that's it. The same thing with Batfleck. It just flips with no explanation. And like I said, the story of this movie is so plain and so generic. The villain is so just one-dimensional. Everything about this movie is just flat on cheesy. It's really, really cheesy, and you can really tell that this is a conflict of styles. You have Zack Snyder's style, which is radically different from Joss Whedon's style, and those styles don't mesh. Zack Snyder's style of directing is much more cynical, while Joss Whedon's style of directing is much more self-referential, much more jokey, much more punchliney. And those different styles don't mesh. And like I said, it doesn't come more clear than when you have Batman acting like a jokester, and when you have Mopey Man going to Superman with no explanation as to how Mopey Man became Superman. It's completely ridiculous. It's so dumb. In terms of the production values of this movie, yeah, you can clearly tell this was heavily reshot. Oh my God, was this movie heavily reshot, especially when you get to the third act. After seeing what the scene originally looks like in Schneider Cut, and then you rewatch this, yeah, it looks ugly. The overly bright red backdrop looks like crap. The costumes, they look like Party City costumes when you light them up. Yeah, it's clear as day that Schneider's vision was more grounded, was more, I wouldn't say grounded because it definitely wasn't grounded, was more darker and more grittier, and the costumes reflected that. Because when you try to brighten them up, they look really bad. They look extremely bad. I mean, look, you don't. You already spent $400 million in this movie. You're gonna tell me you couldn't spend another couple million to, to fix the costumes, to adapt them more appropriately to Josh Whedon's visual style. Instead, you're just like, nah, just brighten the color up. It'll look fine. Instead, it looks like shit because Warner Brothers, they are shit. The action sequences in this movie, they're forgettable. Like, they're extremely forgettable. There are a couple of scenes that I do like. Not for nothing, I do like the opening scene of Batman trying to stop a robber in Gotham City and taking down a parademon. I actually do enjoy that opening sequence. I think it's pretty cool. It goes to show you that I would have loved to have seen a Ben Affleck solo Batman movie, but if we're never going to get it, and I've over it at this point. I mean, in that we get a nice little reference to Black Mass with the Janus Foundation, which is pretty cool. I like it. Can't complain. We get some nice references to Batman lore, like exploiting penguins and things like that. In terms of performance, Ben Affleck's performance in this movie is completely just all over the map. There are scenes where he feels like he's dedicated, and there are scenes where he feels like he just can't be bothered. And none of that is more prevalent than when he's talking to Aquaman, and then when he's shown shaving a beard that is completely just awkward. The opening prologue, he has no beard. When he meets Aquaman, he has a beard. Where did the time go? I don't get it. But yeah, the majority of this movie is just Ben Affleck sleepwalking through a performance, which is a shame because I thought he was like one of the better aspects of BVS. Jeremy, the supporting cast in this movie, completely underutilized. Jeremy Irons returned as Alfred. He and Ben Affleck still have really good chemistry, but Affleck doesn't do much. You have J.K. Simmons playing Commissioner Gordon, and we have a scene of Ben Affleck and JJ and of Batfleck and JJ and Simmons' Gordon interacting with each other, and that's it. They have one scene. What a way to waste J.K. Simmons in the role of Commissioner Gordon. If this movie actually cared, J.K. could be an excellent Gordon, to be honest with you, like a really good Gordon. And that one scene with them just makes me long for more, because why? The action sequences in Gotham Harbor was okay, with Steppenwolf kidnapping a bunch of Star Lab scientists, including Silas Stone, the father of Cyborg. Joe Morton plays Silas Stone. I like Joe Morton. He's in this movie. He's whatever. In the Schneider Cut, he actually has more to do, and it's actually more crucial to the plot. In this one, he's just there to be saved by his son, and they have friction, but that friction is never fully explored nor fully expanded upon in the original version. In the Schneider Cut, it is. But in this, you can tell a lot of Cyborg stuff was cut out of this movie. Like, you can tell that Cyborg got the shit end of the stick when it came to the editing room of Justice League. You don't even need all of his scenes from Schneider Cut, to be honest with you. You just needed his full origin story in this movie, and it would have made you care. You don't need to have every single Cyborg scene that Zack Snyder put in his movie in this, because you really don't. But if you would have had Cyborg's origin story and the friction with his father, then Cyborg would have truly been one of the more standout characters in both versions. Instead, he's not. And it's a shame, because, like I said, Ray Fisher was actually pretty good. And the only time where shit-faced Miller is actually likable is when he and Fisher are sharing screen time together. Like, I would have been totally fine with a team-up movie of this version's Cyborg and Flash, because they do got really decent comedic chemistry with one another. Flash's personality bounces off of Victor's personality fairly well. And like I said, it's one of the few times where Ezra Miller comes across as actually likable. But that's neither. I mean, that's just a tease that we never fully got expanded upon because this universe sucked. You have this random-ass subplot of a family in a house being attacked by parademons. What do they mean to the story? Absolutely nothing. Did not need to be there, just filler. You have this extended flashback sequence of Steppenwolf's first invasion of Earth, and he's taking on Green Lanterns, Atlanteans, Amazons, and man. And it's actually one of the best scenes in this entire movie. But when you actually watch the Snyder Cut, you're like, hey, Steppenwolf shouldn't be there. It should be Darkseid, and blah, blah, blah. So it's like, it's a cool flashback scene, yeah. But when you actually watch what was really supposed to be there, you're kind of like, hey, would have been cooler if the Darkseid teases would have been taking place in this movie, and it was actually Steppenwolf and Darkseid teaming up to take down the forces of man, and they both lose the mother boxes together. I think that would have been cool in both versions, to be honest with you. The last fight sequence in this movie is whatever. You know, Steppenwolf goes out like a punk, and nothing really to write home about. Superman and Cyborg crack jokes about Superman wishes he was still dead. Cyborg can't feel his feet, and I don't care. Wonder Woman makes a wisecrack about she works with children, and okay. Then you have this whole thing, and you have Lois Lane is in this movie, but she doesn't really do anything except bring back Clark after he gets resurrected and has a little tussle with the Justice League because he has no memory of who he is. Whatever. That's pretty much what the 2017 version of Justice League is. It's a whatever movie. As you can tell, I really don't want to talk about it because I just don't really have anything to say. It's just a whatever movie. It's a movie that if this version of Justice League was released in the year 2000, I truly think it would have been a hit, and I still stand by that because I made that same sentiment in my previous review of this movie, and I stand by that. This movie felt like it should have been released in the year 2000. It would have been a smash. Given this movie is out post-Avengers, it's no excuse that the studio thought this was the version that was going to make them bank. This version did not make them bank and made them lose bank. And honestly, truthfully, I don't think they've ever recovered from the Blunder League's failure. So yeah, like in my previous review, I gave this movie a 4 out of 10. I think it's gonna, it's a 4 out of 10. It's still, no, I wanted to do this re-review to see if I would like this movie more or hate this movie more, but my feelings of it are really still the same. It's a really 4 out of 10 movie. It ain't the worst thing you'll ever see, but it's not the greatest thing you'll ever see. It's a frustrating watch because, especially what you know now with Snyder Cut and what could have been, and when you compare that to this, it is really frustrating. But like I said, there were things that Josh Whedon really did get right with some of the characters and some of the situations, even though it totally conflicts with what came before it. So it creates a very lopsided mess. Yeah, Justice League will go down as one of the most frustrating movies ever made. And by the way, the mid-credit scene with Superman and Flash having a race, that was actually entertaining, and the post-credit scene with Joe Magliano's Deathstroke and Jesse Eisenberg's poor excuse for Lex Luthor setting up the Injustice League setting up the Injustice League. Listen, Joe Manganiello's Deathstroke would forever be wasted potential of what could have been, because he had the look down, he had everything down in that brief 2 minutes. Jesse Eisenberg's Lex, I hate you in BVS, and I hate you in this. I just don't like Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. It does nothing for me. He sucks. This movie did not change my mind. You know what? Fuck it. This movie is a 3 out of 10. When you compare it to Snyder League, this movie really is a failure. 3 out of 10 for the 2017 version of Justice League. The things I liked. What I don't like, I still think sucks ass. So yeah, those are my official thoughts on this movie. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.